A UN team on a fact-finding mission investigating crimes committed during the recent war on the Gaza Strip. But with Israel refusing to cooperate again, what makes this investigation any different? Half a dozen previous probes in similar cases involving Israel have resulted in nothing. Can the investigations lead to any prosecutions? Will the offenders be held accountable for their actions? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Jane Dutton. The war on Gaza has elicited damning accusations of misconduct by both Israel and Hamas. But were violations of international law, war crimes and human rights abuses committed during the war that ended in January this year? This week, a UN team visited the Gaza Strip to investigate allegations of abuses by both Israel and Hamas. During the conflict, it's estimated that around 1,400 people were killed, about one-third of them women and children. Israel began its Operation Cast Lead on the 27th of December, stating that it intended to end Hamas rocket fire from Gaza. Over the next 3 weeks, both Hamas and Israel were accused of committing war crimes. Israel said Hamas used civilians as human shields and was therefore responsible for many of their deaths. Israel alternatively was accused of imprecise attacks, deliberately targeting civilians, and the illegal use of white phosphorus as a weapon, to name but a few of the alleged crimes. Israel is not cooperating with the UN Human Rights Council investigation. Both their army and Hamas continue to deny that they acted illegally, but many eyewitness reports seem to tell another story. Now, the man tasked with getting behind the horrors committed during that war is Judge Richard Goldstone, a former Rwanda and Yugoslavia war crimes prosecutor and former judge at the South African Constitutional Court. He's leading this UN investigation, and he joins me from Gaza now. Justice Goldstone, a very big welcome to Inside Story. How is it possible to conduct a fair investigation if you cannot go into Israel and Israel doesn't cooperate? What is the point?
Well, I think there's every point, because we're not going to let non-cooperation, and I hope it changes during the short life of this fact-finding mission, but we're not going to allow non-cooperation to stop us doing an objective, even-handed investigation. What we plan to do, very briefly, is to conduct public hearings in Gaza in the third week of June, when we will invite some of the victims, expert witnesses, to come and talk to us about various aspects of the war. And we're looking at the situation immediately prior to the war, during and after. And then we're going to have public hearings in Geneva, and we will get Israeli witnesses, if we're still not allowed to go into Israel. We'll get Israeli witnesses and other people who can give us evidence of the Israeli allegations and facts, to come and give them to us in Geneva.
Wouldn't that provoke Israel even more, which means that you probably never will get them to the table? Well, you know, we really left with no option. We feel very strongly that we have an important mission to carry out, and we're going to do everything possible within our power to see that we achieve it. If you do not get to see for yourself, though, what happened in southern Israel, will that not affect objectivity?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Jane?
If you don't actually see for yourself on the ground what happened in southern Israel after the accusations that Hamas launched rocket attacks into the country, would that not affect the investigation?
Well, clearly it's second best, but certainly we can get photographic material, video material, and we can get witnesses, and we can get photographs. You know, this will give us a very good a picture of what happened there, and that's not difficult to understand.
Now, Israel is saying that it won't support you because it accuses the UN mission there of bias. The Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesman Yigal Palmor said that Israel rejects the UN mission and will not cooperate with it.
This is what this committee has been instructed to do, nothing else. Not to search for the truth about Gaza, not to search for real human rights breaching. They have been instructed to prove that Israel is guilty, and we will not collaborate with such a masquerade.
Is that true, Justice Goldstone, that you have been instructed to prove that Israel is guilty?
It's simply not true. Nobody has given us any instructions at all. The mandate we've been given by the President of the Human Rights Council is to conduct a fact-finding mission into all facts relevant to the context of the war, whether committed before, during or after. I've made that clear ad nauseum, that clearly includes, and this was accepted by the President and the Human Rights Council, it includes the whole question of Hamas and other rocket attacks on southern Israel. So to say we've been given instructions is simply not true, and quite frankly, I haven't, in any of the positions I've held, whether in South Africa or in the United Nations Tribunal, ever accepted instructions. And if anybody tried to give me instructions, I would make that very public forthwith.
Yes, I've certainly heard that is true. If Israel is not willing to help you with this investigation, does it suggest that they've got something to hide?
Well, you know, I really wouldn't like to comment on that. You know, I can understand Israel's suspicion of the Human Rights Council. It has been partial for many years in respect of Israel, but I think this mandate should have been seen by Israel as really a new departure, and I would have thought that it was very much in Israel's interest to cooperate with us.
You are investigating allegations levelled at Hamas using civilians as human shields. How widespread is that investigation likely to be?
Well, we're certainly looking into it. I don't want to anticipate in any way the factual findings that our mission will make, or the conclusions we'll come to, or the recommendations we'll come to. You know, we're really at the beginning of what is going to be a short mission. So I think people will have to be patient and wait for the outcome.
You keep saying a short mission. Why is it such a short mission?
Well, the Human Rights Council made it clear that they want to have our report before the Council at its meeting, at its next session at the beginning of September. This means that we have to submit our report early in August. We will need at least the month of July to write it. But you know, we don't feel that we being inhibited or shortchanged in any way by having a short time period.
Do you think the victims are inhibited in any way? We've spoken about the lack of cooperation by Israel, but many Gazans feel threatened by Hamas. They tell us they feel threatened by Hamas. They're too petrified to speak out.
Well, that's certainly not the impression. We've now, members of the mission arrived here in Gaza on Monday. We've visited 14 areas. We've spoken to many victims. And I've really been impressed with the openness and candor with which they've spoken to us.
What have they been telling you? What have you learned? I obviously don't want you to jeopardize your investigation, but what have you learned that possibly surprised you?
Well, you know, it's always different when one visits scenes. I'm surprised at the extent of devastation in and around Gaza City. We've been to northern Gaza. That surprised me, because I don't believe that photographs or even video photographs can portray the reality. And it's one of the reasons I'm very much in favor of having public hearings. I think it's important to give voice to victims and to show the world exactly what happened. And I stress on both sides.
What happens once you come up with these findings? I mean, you have a formidable reputation, you have an incredible sense of justice. I can't imagine you getting involved in this if nothing is going to happen. There have been so many missions in the past, so many accusations leveled, most of them have been one-sided, and nothing has come out of it. What's the difference this time?
Well, I hope there will be a difference. Obviously, in the first instance, the report will go to the Human Rights Council. But I would hope, and it seems to me possible, that it may be taken up by the other organs of the United Nations, whether the General Assembly or the Security Council. But I think what will be interesting will be the effect of having public hearings. as far as my knowledge goes, has never been done before, public hearings as part of a fact-finding mission. I want to stress it's not a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We're going to have 2 days of hearings in Gaza. We're going to have probably 4 days of hearings in Geneva. We'll be hearing victims, we'll be hearing experts dealing with the effect, for example, of the fear of living in a situation of war, the effect of living in a situation of receiving sustained rocket attacks, as is the case in southern Israel. So I think all of these things are going to come out of public hearings, and I hope that will galvanize certainly civil society, and I hope also the political world, into doing something about it. And really one of the main motives I have, that I had for accepting what is obviously a very difficult mission, is the hope, I hope not naive, of doing something that might assist the peace process.
Okay, if this does assist the peace process, surely those who have been held responsible, who have been accused of committing crimes, need to be held responsible.
Well, clearly, you know, I've spent a good part of my life dealing with the importance of accountability, and certainly in the last 20 years. I think it's very important that there should be accountability for all international crimes. This is something that didn't exist before 1993. I'm very proud that the work that we did in the Yugoslavia and the Rwanda tribunals has really led to a new world of international accountability for international crimes, and I think I see this as part of it.
But it hasn't led to international accountability as far as Israel it has been accused of in the past. They have been.
But it hasn't. It hasn't. Sorry, it hasn't led to accountability in many areas, not only in the Middle East, but certainly it's led now to accountability in a number of countries, in the Balkans and the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda. Happily now in Sierra Leone.
Sorry, if they have been held accountable there, who is going to hold them accountable this time? I mean, there is no precedent, so how's it going to work?
Well, you know, your guess is as good as mine, but there are a number of ways. It could be a matter. It could be a matter for the Security Council. It could, I would hope, be a matter for open civilian courts in Israel to have a look at allegations that have been made, and similarly, if we come to the conclusion that Hamas or other groups in Gaza are guilty of international crimes, of war crimes, then I would hope that our report would encourage courts in Palestine, Palestinian courts, to do something about it. And if they don't, then I think the international community must do something.
Okay, under the concept of universal jurisdiction, is it possible, do you think, to use the findings of your report to hold individuals accountable? In other words, would a third state country be able to initiate proceedings for their arrest?
Well, there are a number of countries, particularly in Europe, that have powers of under universal jurisdiction to do something. I've little doubt any findings we make could encourage that sort of thing to happen. But I would stress this is not a judicial investigation. We're not going to come up with any suggestions of convictions. We're going to produce facts and make recommendations on them.
But what makes this then any different? And excuse me for harking back to that point. So many investigations have come out in the past into allegations in that area of misconduct in that area, and nothing has been done. We've spoken to eyewitnesses, to human rights organizations who point fingers at both sides. But until you start making people accountable, this can happen again and again and again.
Well, you know, people have said that in other situations, and some inquiries have made a difference. You know, I obviously hope that this one will be dealt with differently. It's a United Nations investigation. It's an independent investigation. I'm absolutely satisfied beyond any question of the independence and objectivity of all 4 members of our mission.
Are you suggesting?
And I hope that
Sorry, excuse me, jumping in. Are you suggesting that the United Nations might actually do something about this? They've never done it before, considering the US holds the veto power.
Jane, you know, there's always a first time, and if one doesn't attempt it, if one doesn't try, then obviously nothing's going to happen.
That would also suggest a change
if nothing concrete
in the US administration's attitude.
If nothing. So I was going to say, if nothing concrete happens as a result of this investigation, all I can say is it won't be for lack of trying on our side.
Have you been made any promises by Obama's administration that things will change in making players in the region more accountable for their actions?
No, absolutely not. We haven't had those sorts of discussions, but certainly I hope that the Obama administration will take this sort of mission and its report more seriously than its predecessor.
You mentioned a little earlier about the problem of having knowledge leading to accountability, and it seems to be a big problem in this region. How do you make that happen? Does that suggest that there's some sort of gap in international law?
Well, you know, the very fact that there is a mission looking into the facts is important. I think the very fact that leaders, whether political or military, know that somebody's looking over their shoulder and will continue to do so, I think can affect conduct for the better in the future.
Is there any role for this into the for the International Criminal Court? Israel is not a signatory. Palestine can't be because it's not a state. I know that there have been suggestions that the ICC could be involved. Is that likely?
Well, there is the suggestion that the ICC might be involved. That would depend on the legal interpretation of the Rome Statute as to whether the Palestinian Authority is a quote-unquote state for the purpose of the statute. I wouldn't begin to express a view on that. I haven't looked at it. I have no particular expertise on it. But that's a matter that the court will have to determine, the International Criminal Court. But if it finds, and it may well, that it does not have jurisdiction for the reasons you state, then the only way the International Criminal Court could be engaged would be, as in the case of Darfur, by a Security Council reference.
You've investigated so many allegations of war crimes, Rwanda and former Yugoslavia, as you mentioned. What brings a country to the point of committing such horrors? Obviously talking about what's happened in Israel and Palestine. What is it in the human psyche that allows that to happen?
Well, you know, if I can generalize and not talk about the Israel-Palestine situation, but in general, I don't believe that huge crimes can be committed if there isn't some form of dehumanization. And I would include apartheid in our mutual home country, South Africa, whether it was the Holocaust, whether it's Rwanda, whether it's Cambodia. If you look at all of them, the common factor is that the perpetrator dehumanized the victim. If people regard people as being on the same level as they are, I just don't believe it's possible to commit this sort of crime. If you add fear to dehumanization, then you really get a toxic mix. And fear does exist in many of these situations. In South Africa, there was a fear of blacks pushing whites into the sea. In the case of the Middle East, there's obviously a fear by Israel of being surrounded by a hostile Arab world. So it's fear plus this dehumanization.
How do you then tackle that fear? And talking particularly about the victims now of these horrors, what needs to be done to bring some sort of peace to their lives?
Well, I think what needs to be done is people need to be educated. People need to see, and that's the importance of public hearing. People in Israel need to see Arab victims, Palestinian victims, as ordinary human beings and to relate to them. as mothers, as children, as fathers, as bereaved families. And I think the converse also needs to be portrayed. I think victims in southern Israel need to be seen by Palestinians as having the same concerns and the same fears as they do.
Does it help the process that we, the international community, have been forced into negotiating with perpetrators?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
The fact that we are forced, the international community, the international law community have been forced into negotiating with perpetrators, that so often they hold the cards.
Well, that's the political reality. You know, I'm very grateful I'm not a politician. I think that's a different world, and a world in which I find fascinating, but I'm very happy not to be part of. And that's really the answer to your earlier questions. All we can do is present a report, and the political process then takes over.
I was going to say, you must be hoping for certain political ramifications to result from your report. What are they?
Well, certainly that the report is taken seriously by the United Nations and by the important powers within the United Nations. You know, people, in my view, talk about the United Nations as if it's a government. The United Nations can't do very much if the major governments don't support it and don't enable it to do it. So it's really up to national capitals to have a look at, I hope, what will be seen to be an objective report, and sitting down in New York and in Geneva and saying, look, you know, we should really do something more about this situation.
What do you believe needs to be done so that this never happens again?
Well, I think there needs to be far more dialogue between the major parties. I think, you know, it's not helpful that the major parties are not talking to each other. I think, for example, there has to be some sort of a peace brokered within Palestine itself. It doesn't help the peace process that the Fatah and Hamas in particular are at loggerheads with each other. So I think that's an area that needs to be dealt with urgently and crucially. And I think when that happens, I think there need to be appropriate negotiations. But ultimately, what one needs, I believe, is good leadership. One needs leaders who can deliver on promises they make.
Justice Goldstone, thank you very much. It was very interesting talking to you. Thank you, and I wish you best of luck in your mission.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, of course, the viewer, for joining us here on this special edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please do email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now, and thanks for watching.